Developing right now on Morning News Now, uncertainty on Wall Street, in Washington, and all over the world due to mixed messaging from President Trump about his ongoing trade war. Over the weekend, the president backing off on some of those steep tariffs against China, now saying smartphones, computers, and other electronics will be excluded from that plan.
So this is unfolding exactly like we thought it would in a dominant scenario. It was par for the course. Actually, it was a birdie for President Trump to do exactly what he did.
But now a new pledge by the president raising concerns that the exemption could be short-lived. We have team coverage. Also this morning, a suspect is in custody facing charges including attempted murder and arson after a fire at the home of Pennsylvania's Governor Josh Shapiro. We'll bring you the latest on that investigation. Plus, a New York helicopter company is shut down effective immediately. This comes just days after a horrific crash that killed 6 people. What we're learning from investigators. And ready for liftoff. This morning, history is set to unfold as an all-woman crew full of familiar faces prepares to launch to the edge of space. We're counting down to the latest launch of Blue Origin's new Shepard rocket. A lot of exciting stuff this morning. Thanks for being here. I'm Stephen Romo, in for Joe and Savannah today. And we do begin this morning with what's expected to be another volatile week for the stock market, spurred on by President Trump's back and forth on tariffs with trading partners around the world. Late Friday, U.S. Customs and Border Protection said smartphones, computers, and other tech devices will be exempt from tariffs. Now, most of those products are produced in China, that country, of course, welcoming the move. But the exemption could be short-lived after the president said just yesterday that he's soon planning to impose new tariffs on semiconductors. We'll speak with NBC News senior policy reporter Shannon Pettypiece on what this means. First, though, let's get to our Washington correspondent Alice Barr with the latest. Alice, good morning.
Good morning, Stephen. Yeah, here at the start of what could be another rocky week on Wall Street, investors are weighing these announced exemptions for Chinese-made tech products against Trump administration signals that the reprieve won't last long, all of it adding confusion to an already uncertain economy. This morning, more tariff turmoil. The Trump administration's surprise move exempting tech devices like smartphones and computers from punishing 125% tariffs on Chinese imports, though a 20% levy remains, giving stock markets an early boost, even as President Trump suggested the reprieve would be short-lived, with new tariffs coming on imported semiconductors.
Like we did with steel, like we did with automobiles, like we did with aluminum, which are now fully on. We'll be doing that with semiconductors, with chips.
The president saying details would come over the next week, and the Commerce Secretary said smartphones and computers would be included in those new sector tariffs, also touting upcoming tariffs on pharmaceuticals.
We need our medicines and we need semiconductors and our electronics to be built in America.
The uncertainty over when import taxes could hit and how much they'll force prices up, setting American consumers on edge.
I feel like I shouldn't have to be checking the news every single day to make sure I can afford products that we've all been kind of accustomed to.
As small businesses that import from China stock up early to head off price spikes.
So they just kept exponentially growing, and so it's been really a nightmare.
Those signs of economic stress raising concerns among forecasters like investor Ray Dalio, who predicted the 2008 financial crisis.
I think that right now we are at a decision-making point and very close to a recession. And I'm worried about something worse than a recession if this isn't handled well.
As the Trump administration urges calm. And looking ahead to today at the White House, President Trump is hosting the president of El Salvador amid a fight over the migrants the Trump administration deported to a mega prison in that country, and one in particular who the administration admits was mistakenly deported but has not been returned to the U.S. despite court orders to take steps to bring him back. Stephen?
All right, more to come. Alice, thanks. Well, the trade, tariffs, and market turmoil were the main focus for White House trade advisor Peter Navarro as he appeared on NBC's Meet the Press on Sunday. Here's moderator Kristen Welker with more.
Hello there, Stephen. This week on Meet the Press, I spoke to White House trade advisor Peter Navarro about concerns Americans are having over market uncertainty. On the campaign trail, President Trump promised to bring down prices on day one. Now he's telling Americans there's going to be a transition cost. I don't have to tell you this. People are worried about everything from their retirement savings to the prices they're going to pay at the grocery store, whether shelves will be stocked. I think the big question is how long will Americans have to wait? How long will this transition of uncertainty last?
Well, let's talk about both recession and inflation, because there was some really big news this last week. And I'm going to answer your question. Trust me on that. So we had really good news on the inflation front. Both the producer price index, which is wholesale prices, consumer price index, had the lowest print since fall of 2023. Really good news. Congress passed the resolution, the budget resolution, which lays the groundwork for having the biggest, broadest tax cut in American history before August. Now, what does that mean? What does it mean for both recession and inflation? It means that we're going to have a debt-neutral tax cut financed by tariff revenues that's going to stimulate growth. It could be worth as much of 1.5 points in terms of GDP growth. At the same time, it's deflationary, not inflationary. It's unlike the Biden fiscal measures, which were just pure debt-driven. So there's really good news here.
You can see my full interview and a lot more at MeetThePress.com. You can also get more Meet the Press here on NBC News Now every weekday at 4 p.m.
All right, Kristen Welker, thanks so much. And let's get more of all of this with NBC News senior policy reporter Shannon Pettypiece. Shannon, thanks so much for being with us this morning. So there's been so much will they, won't they, sort of back and forth with this. The latest on the phones and tech devices getting this exemption, but even that has some confusion. What can you tell us?
Yeah, so what are consumers supposed to do? If you need to upgrade your phone, if you need to buy a laptop for your kid, how are you supposed to make these decisions? I would say right now there's kind of a reprieve for a bit. These electronics are still going to have a 20% tariff on them, which is not nothing, but it's not the sort of catastrophic situation we were looking at with 120, 150% tariff, which would have driven things like an iPhone up by hundreds of dollars. Ooh. So consumers still could see a price increase. And then you heard the president there over the weekend saying that additional tariffs could also be coming. So it seems the one thing that is for certain, at least in the near term, is that tariffs are sticking around. How much they are, when they're going into place is still kind of in flux, but that tariffs are going to still be around. And that's going to mean companies are going to have an additional cost to bring things into the U.S. And either they will pass all or some of that on to consumers, or they'll take lower profits and try and cut costs elsewhere.
And just the uncertainty here, not the tariffs themselves, but the uncertainty is definitely having an impact on the stock market. How are things looking globally and for U.S. futures?
Yeah, well, after that really wild week last week, so far stocks look like they're up a little bit, especially a company like Apple. These tariffs would have been really catastrophic for Apple. About 80% of their products come from China. So a bit of reprieve here, but, there's still, as you mentioned, so much uncertainty in other parts of the market to keep an eye on, which I know people aren't accustomed to following, but things like the bond market, things like currency that might show wider recession fears or a shift away from investing in the U.S. and in money going to other countries.
And on that topic of confusion, during the campaign, we heard so much drill, baby drill from the Trump administration, a callback to Sarah Palin, of course, from the 2008 race, meaning that there could be a boost in oil production, which a lot of companies and people thought could be a good thing. But the tariffs actually may be hurting that. So you've been looking into this. What can you tell us?
Right. Well, a big part of the president's economic plan has been to drive down oil and gas prices by increasing productions. And people are starting to get a little reprieve at the pump. The problem is that if you're an oil driller, you don't like to drill for oil when prices are low. And oil prices have come down because of fears of recession. Costs for oil producers have also gone up. So the steel, the pipes they need, all of that has also gone up before tariffs. So oil companies are seeing higher costs, a lower price of oil. So they're starting to cancel projects and pull back from drilling, which could mean less oil produced in the U.S. and eventually higher oil prices and higher gas prices for consumers at the pump.
Wow, just so many facets continue to play out from this. Shannon, thanks for helping us understand this. We appreciate it. All right, to Pennsylvania now, where a man is facing charges including attempted murder in connection to a fire this weekend at Governor Josh Shapiro's official residence. Police evacuated the governor and his family from their home around 2 a.m. on Sunday morning. Thankfully, no one was hurt. NBC News correspondent Shaquille Brewster is in Harrisburg with more on what police say appears to be a targeted attack.
Hi there. Yes, police say a 38-year-old man is in custody after he broke into the home of Governor Josh Shapiro and started a fire. While no one was injured in this attack, it's being called a targeted attack. You look at some of the images and you just see the charred remains of the dining room inside. Police say Cody Balmer, that's the suspect, was charged with serious counts including attempted murder, terrorism, aggravated arson, and aggravated assault. Police say security here was notified that someone had broken onto the property, but that this man evaded security, was able to use a hammer to break the window of the residence and then set off multiple incendiary devices, listing it in a complaint that was just released to the public. Now, speaking to reporters yesterday, Governor Shapiro was emotional at times and also angry, saying that his family was at risk and saying that he would not be intimidated from doing his job. We know that overnight, President Trump said that he was aware of the attack, and we heard from Vice President J.D. Vance, who posted on social media calling the attack disgusting. We know the investigation continues. The FBI is also involved in this investigation, and we learned from authorities overnight that federal charges are certainly possible. As we continue to watch the scene, you look at some of those pictures again. Traumatizing moments for the governor as his family was inside, guests were inside. The governor saying that he's going to continue to do his job, but that, of course, there's some scary moments that they're dealing with. Back to you.
All right, Shaq Brewster, thank you. Well, this morning, a Wisconsin teenager who is charged with murdering his parents is also now accused of plotting to assassinate President Donald Trump. NBC News correspondent Maggie Vespa has those details from the FBI affidavit.
17-year-old Nikita Kasip, already charged with the chilling double murder of his Wisconsin parents, now in the FBI's crosshairs for investigators believe plotting to kill President Donald Trump, according to newly unsealed federal court documents. The news stunning the small city of Waukesha.
What's it like to hear that about your neighbor?
It's terrible. I was just so torn by it.
This FBI affidavit saying authorities found in the teen's phone a manifesto calling for the assassination of the President of the United States in order to foment a political revolution and promote white supremacy, along with materials linking him to a neo-Nazi extremist group. Investigators writing Kasip in messages with someone said he planned to use a drone in the attack that would drop a bomb with nuts, bolts, needles, and then flee to Ukraine. The affidavit stating Kasip had paid for, at least in part, a drone and explosives and was communicating with someone with a Ukrainian number. It did not say where or when he allegedly planned to target the president. This after, back in late February, local authorities during a welfare check found the teen's parents shot to death in the family home. The affidavit saying the couple had been dead for roughly 2 weeks and Kasip living in the home with their bodies, then fleeing before he was arrested in Kansas. Investigators writing the killing of his parents appeared to be an effort to obtain the financial means and autonomy necessary to carry out his plan.
Our Maggie Vespa reporting there. Kasip has not entered a plea for those state murder charges, but this new affidavit indicates federal charges could be coming for the foiled assassination plot. Well, this morning, we're learning new information about the helicopter charter company behind the New York flight that led to last Thursday's deadly crash. That company shutting down. It comes as investigators continue to search for more pieces of the aircraft in the Hudson River that have not yet been recovered. They're hoping all these pieces can come together to give them a better idea of what caused the crash, which killed all 6 people on board. NBC News correspondent Aaron McLaughlin has the latest.
Hey there. Well, divers are expected to return to the waters of the Hudson today, searching for clues as to exactly what caused that helicopter to crash. You can see behind me, in fact, in the distance, those blinking lights over there, that is a police boat. Meanwhile, this morning, the FAA has released a statement saying that the helicopter tour company in question is, quote, shutting down their operations immediately. In a statement writing, we will be launching an immediate review of the helicopter tour operator's license and safety record, adding safety is the FAA's #1 priority, and we will not hesitate to act to protect the flying public. This after lawmakers, including New York Senator Chuck Schumer, called for the helicopter tour company to be shut down pending an investigation questioning the helicopter's safety record. We have heard from the company prior to the FAA statement in their own statement saying that they are, quote, profoundly saddened by the devastating crash into the Hudson River, adding they are fully cooperating with the FAA and NTSB investigations. Meanwhile, the NTSB is saying that there was no flight recorder, no video camera on board the helicopter. They are still looking for critical components, including the main rotor and the main gearbox. Senator Chuck Schumer saying that without some of those components being found by divers in the water in the coming days, it'll be very difficult to piece together exactly what happened. Back to you.
A lot of work left. Aaron McLaughlin, thank you. Well, turning now to our weather for the week ahead. NBC meteorologist Michelle Grossman is here tracking some severe storms across the Ohio Valley. Michelle, good morning.
Good morning. Yeah, we are tracking some wet weather to start off our work week in the Ohio Valley. We could see some strong storms with damaging winds, the chance for hail, and even a few tornadoes. So it's a weak system. It's moving pretty quickly, but we are looking at the chance for even some spring snow. Where you see the blue, that would be in portions of northern Minnesota, northern Wisconsin, the UP of Michigan, and then some heavy rain in spots. We could see 1 to 2 inches in the Appalachians, but relatively weak system. This will all move off to the east as we go throughout today and also tomorrow. So here's that front as it moves off to the east. Spring snow targets the northern Great Lakes, severe storms for the mid-Atlantic, and also the lower Ohio Valley with those damaging winds and also some pretty large hail. And then as we go throughout tomorrow, it moves further off to the east, off the coast for the most part, but still looking at those scattered snow showers downwind of the Great Lakes. So that's going to be the biggest story over the next several days. And in portions of the UP of Michigan, we could see 4 to 8 inches of snow. Now, in terms of the severe weather threat, we're looking mainly where you see this yellow shading area. That's the likeliest spot for seeing the stronger storms. So 14 million people are at risk for that large hail, winds gusting up to 60 miles per hour. Again, could see a few tornadoes, but that's lower on the risk scale. We're looking at Morgantown, D.C., Charleston, Lexington, Somerset, the likeliest spot for seeing some of those storms as that daytime heating gets going. Now, here's the winter alerts. We have winter weather advisories, winter storm warnings. The winter storm warning is in that pink color. So we're looking locally up to 8 inches on April 14th. And this is a snowfall forecast where you see these colors here, pinks and purples. That will be the highest amounts correlating to the UP of Michigan. Temperatures were kind of split once again. We have the jet stream that's dipped a little bit from the northern plains, the upper Midwest, and that's where we're seeing those more cold temperatures and where we're seeing some snow. But look how it's dipped. And then we have those abnormal highs on the west coast, the southern plains, into portions of the east. And we're well above normal in some spots. Del Rio today, 16 degrees above what is typical for this time of year. That's going to get you to 100 degrees. Las Vegas, 87. That's 8 degrees above what is typical for this time of year. Tucson, you're really warm too, 93. And then notice the eastern half of the nation, too, pretty warm. 77 in Charleston, West Virginia, 8 degrees above normal. That's where we're going to see the chance for some of those storms. So again, that warm air clashing with that cooler air kind of helping to spur some of those storms. Atlanta 82, 81 in New Orleans. Same story as we go throughout tomorrow and Wednesday. There is that roller coaster there. So that jet stream sort of dips a little bit further to the east, a little bit further to the south. So now we're talking about temperatures below average in Paducah, 6 degrees below what is typical for this time of year. There is that cooler air in place, kind of allowing that door to open from Canada, allowing that cooler air to come in. And still really warm out to the plains, the Intermountain West, into the Southwest, 87 in Las Vegas. That is 8 degrees above what is typical for this time of year. Boise, 77, and 75 in Billings. Then as we go throughout the later part of the week, we're looking at temperatures really warm in Denver. Mid-70s Wednesday, Thursday, 50 degrees on Friday. So we have that big dip. That happens a lot in Denver. We see those big dips from day to day. And we'll see that as we go Thursday into Friday. Kansas City, we're getting closer to average, too, 78 degrees. Dallas, back to 85. We're close to near 90 degrees today. And then warming highs in the east into portions of New England late week. We're looking at temperatures in Boston. Friday, 61 degrees, 78 degrees in Cincinnati, 69 in Detroit, and 73 degrees in D.C. So we're going to see those temperatures rising as we go throughout the next couple of days. It depends on where you are with this roller coaster here, with that jet stream sort of dipping down to the south. Now, the warm air is going to give you the chance for some fire weather. So we're looking at fire alerts in place in portions of Nebraska, also in Kansas. because we have an elevated risk. We're looking at winds gusting up to 50 miles per hour, low humidity, dry vegetation. So that's going to elevate the risk there. So we have so many stories going on today.
Wow, yeah.
Right? We have spring snow, we have spring showers, we have fire weather, and we have those kind of roller coaster temperatures.
And I was just complaining about the gross weekend in New York City over the weekend, and now the warm up today on a Monday.
And I was in Florida for the weekend.
Okay, now you're just
82,
bragging. Wow.
sunny. Could not be more perfect.
I'm so jealous.
I know. I was texting my friends at home. I'm like, sorry.
I bet. Michelle Grossman, thanks so much. Well, Sunday was a white-knuckle ride all the way at the Masters as one of golf's biggest stars finally achieved a career milestone. After years of heartbreak, Rory McIlroy got his first green jacket Sunday in a thrilling final round at the Masters. That victory did not come easy, though. It seemed like he won and lost the tournament about 4 different times. Early on, he lost the lead, and later on he put a ball in the water in a critical spot. Then, when it mattered most, he birdied 17 and bogeyed 18 just when you thought it couldn't get any more dramatic. But that forced a sudden death playoff where he drained a 4-foot putt to seal the deal and complete the career Grand Slam. McIlroy becomes just the 6th golfer in history to win all 4 majors, joining legends like Jack Nicklaus and Tiger Woods. Tiger himself posting on X, "Welcome to the club, Rory. You're part of history. Proud of you." Very exciting stuff. Well, much more to come here on Morning News Now. Later this hour, a landmark trial in Washington that could force Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg to sell Instagram. A high-profile case with far-reaching implications. But up first, after the break, history in the making. We'll take you to Texas, where a star-studded all-female crew is gearing up to launch to the edge of space. We'll be right back. We're back now with an update on the Israel-Hamas war. Hundreds of wounded and sick people are searching for medical care in Gaza this morning after the last fully functioning hospital there was destroyed by Israeli airstrikes on Sunday. That's according to the hospital's director. Patients and hospital staff were forced to evacuate in the pre-dawn hours Sunday after 2 Israeli missiles destroyed the emergency department and other critical facilities. Gaza health officials say there were no casualties in that strike. NBC News international correspondent Matt Bradley joins us now from Tel Aviv with more on this. Matt, good morning to you. So do we know why the hospital was targeted, and were patients and staff given any type of warning before this?
Yeah, they were given about 20 minutes of warning, Stephen. And, you know, this is something that we've been seeing over and over again. The Israelis targeting hospitals, and their justification was that this was used as a Hamas command and control center. We've seen this in the past with some larger facilities like Al-Shifa Hospital, which has been badly damaged in a lot of the fighting. That was one of the reasons, because of the damage to some of these other hospitals, a lot of those patients had been at this one trying to seek medical care after the other hospitals had been hit. And this is part of what we're hearing from the Israelis constantly, that Hamas is using medical facilities, which are supposed to be protected under international law, as human shields. Now, Hamas has denied this and said that they were not doing this, and so that this is part of Israel's war on the people of the Gaza Strip. But it was very lucky that no one was injured or killed in this attack. One girl was killed, or she died, because she wasn't able to receive medical care during this evacuation. So that was one of the knock-on effects of this Israeli attack that struck this hospital.
So much fallout there. And there was more news on the Hamas front over the weekend. Matt, they released a video of Adnan Alexander, the last living American hostage held captive in Gaza. What do we know about his condition, and is his family responding yet?
Yeah, we don't know much about his condition. He looked as though he was more or less okay, but, you know, we can't talk about what he actually said because this was a comment that was taken from him under duress while he was in captivity. I can say that he pleaded for his release or his rescue, and it doesn't look as though, you know, I can describe that he looked as though he was in a great deal of emotional pain and distress. Now, we heard from his family, and they said, timing this video to the first day of the Passover holiday, they said that when you sit down to your Passover meals, remember that there is no, basically, they said there is no liberation as long as hostages like Adnan Alexander are still being held in captivity.
Yeah, on that topic, Matt, many hostages' families, of course, celebrating the start of another Passover yesterday without their loved ones. How are they celebrating this holiday during this ordeal?
Yeah, that's right. I spoke with one woman on Saturday, the first day of Passover, whose son is in captivity in the Gaza Strip. He was a young soldier. He's an Israeli, not an American. She said that she's actually not observing the holiday. She says she's not observing any holidays for the past year and a half, as long as her son has been captive. I asked her about how she feels when a holiday like Passover comes along. Here's what she told me.
Is it painful watching all of these families getting together?
Yeah, it's painful, and it's I have so many memories about me as a family together with Nimrod used to celebrate. It's too hard for us to celebrate and together all the family, and if Nimrod is not with us.
And, you know, one of the interesting things about this, of course, Passover is a celebration of the Jewish history of flight from captivity, of liberation. And that's why, as I mentioned from Vicky, this mother, she was telling me how this Passover has particular resonance for her when she thinks about her son's continued captivity and all those dozens of others who remain in the Gaza Strip.
Certainly thinking about them. All right, Matt Bradley, thanks so much for that update. Well, we are just a few hours away from the launch of the first all-woman space crew in more than 60 years. The private spaceflight company Blue Origin will shuttle a star-studded crew, including singer Katy Perry and CBS Morning's co-host Gayle King, right up past the edge of space. They'll be traveling at more than 3 times the speed of sound aboard Blue Origin's fully reusable New Shepard rocket. Founded by billionaire Jeff Bezos, Blue Origin is one of the major players in the growing commercial space tourism industry. For more on all of this, let's bring in NBC News correspondent Priscilla Thompson. She's at Launch Site 1 in Van Horn, Texas. We also have Dr. Emily Rice. She's an associate professor of astrophysics at Macaulay Honors College at City University of New York. She's also a resident research associate at the American Museum of Natural History, my favorite museum in New York City. Thank you both for being here. And Priscilla, let's start with you. So much excitement about this. Walk us through what's going to be happening in just a few hours from now.
Yeah, Stephen, good morning. I think I got the best assignment of the day, but in just over an hour, we expect to see these 6 ladies load into that capsule. And then at 9:30 a.m. Easter time, they are expected to lift off. We are going to see that rocket soar into the air. And then about 2.5 minutes in, we should see the rocket separate from the capsule. And so the rocket is going to come back down onto the landing pad as the capsule continues to soar just past the Kármán line, passing that space boundary. These women are expected to experience about 4 minutes of weightlessness. They're going to get those sweeping views of Earth with those big, massive windows inside that capsule, and then they will come down safely, and we will see those emotional moments that we often see when folks emerge from that capsule after having such an amazing experience. So quite a journey, all in about 11 minutes total. Stephen?
Wow, just 11 minutes. I did not have Gayle King and Katy Perry going to space on my 2025 bingo card. That is for sure. Professor Rice, let's bring you in here.
Neither did I.
Yeah, let's talk about this, the New Shepard rocket. What are some things that are unique about this space flight vehicle?
Yeah, this is a very, very cool vehicle, and it's just great that there are so many players in the field right now for space exploration. The New Shepard rocket is phenomenal in that it really is focused on space tourism. There is still science going on, and it's still super meaningful to have people experience space like this. This is also a 99% of the dry mass of the rocket and the capsule are reusable. So that's very, very cool. The views I've heard are great. You know, they focus on the windows. They focus on everybody having a window seat. It can hold 6 people, which is more than the Dragon capsule, more than the Soyuz. It's just very, very cool that so many more people can get to experience this with these New Shepard flights.
Yeah, definitely want a window seat for that. Priscilla, we mentioned this is the first all-woman space crew to launch in 61 years. So tell us the itinerary. Who's going to be on this list?
Yeah, Stephen, so you have 6 phenomenal women who are going to be on board, all of them handpicked by Lauren Sanchez. She's a former news anchor and also Blue Origin's founder Jeff Bezos' fiance. She's going to be on board along with pop icon Katy Perry, journalist Gayle King, producer Carrie Ann Flynn, and 2 really accomplished scientists, Aisha Bowe and also Amanda Nguyen. They're both going to be taking experiments up, and Amanda Nguyen will make history, is set to make history as the first Vietnamese woman in space space ever. So quite a historic mission today.
Wow. And on that topic, Professor Rice, can you put this more into a historical context for us, just in terms of space flight? What is the significance behind an all-woman crew?
Yeah, this is very, very cool. So like you said, this is the first all-woman crew since 1963. And it's super easy to remember that one because that was the very first woman in space who went by herself. That was Valentina Tereshkova on the Vostok 6 space capsule. So she did go further. She orbited several times. And so she was in space for almost a full day, I believe, before she came back down. So this is still a little bit different. But 6 women in space like that hasn't happened since the very first woman in space. I think this is just a phenomenally exciting thing to have such a diverse crew, such a representative crew. It's so phenomenal to have, artists and activists and communicators on these flights, because the more people that get to see themselves in this crew, the more people that get to learn directly from these experienced astronauts once they come back down it's just going to make space exploration even more accessible for everyone.
Yeah, and inspiring, I'm sure, to so many people who are watching. Priscilla, I'm always fascinated by the training side of this. You said it's just an 11-minute flight. What kind of training did they have to go through to get ready for this?
Yeah, so we know that they've been here a few days, and typically with these Blue Origin flights, they get about 14 hours of training, and that includes things like flight simulations, getting to know the capsule, and also doing mission rehearsals, all in preparation for those 11 minutes. Stephen?
Wow, incredible. I would take that 11 minutes, though. Professor Rice, Blue Origin, they have gotten some criticism over the cost of the tickets, believed to be hundreds of thousands of dollars in range. There's been a criticism of space tourism sort of altogether. So should we just see this as a fun trip, or could these launches lead to more exploration, more discovery?
We can absolutely have both. That's what's so phenomenal about these trips. This one in particular, I was really excited to read about one of the experiments that's going up, because it's not just a NASA experiment. It is a plant biology, a space botany experiment that is prepared by students from Winston-Salem State University. And Aisha Bowe is helping to take that up to learn about how plants will react to microgravity on a molecular level. And so that's very, very cool. That's something these student experiments like this might not happen if we don't have these very, very regular space flights and all the even more accessibility that's funded, partially funded by the space tourism.
The big names are getting a lot of attention, but the science is going on as well. Priscilla Thompson, Dr. Emily Rice, thank you both so much. Well, coming up, progress in America's war against a powerful drug.
When people say they take fentanyl, it's almost never fentanyl. There's always something else in there.
The latest in the efforts to prevent overdose deaths, that's coming up next on Morning News Now. We're back now with some welcome news in America's war on drugs. The Centers for Disease Control reports that the number of fentanyl overdose deaths is the lowest it has been in 5 years. It's thanks in large part due to real-time research that allows scientists to discover a drug's chemical makeup. NBC News correspondent Priya Sridhar spoke to one of the people leading that important research.
This is perhaps the unexpected front lines of the war on drugs.
LSD, fentanyl.
Dr. Nabrian Dasgupta and his team at this lab at UNC Chapel Hill combed through drug samples collected from across the country.
Frontline public health programs, health departments, clinics, EMS.
The goal? Understanding the specific chemical composition of drugs circulating in the streets in real time.
What exactly are they trying to discover by sending them here specifically?
Usually when people say they take fentanyl, it's almost never fentanyl. There's always something else in there.
They run those small samples through this machine. Then they analyze the molecular structure.
If we want to help people keep safe and avoid things that they don't want to put in their bodies, this is the way to do it.
There's been a dramatic reduction in overdose deaths in recent months. The CDC now saying the numbers dropped to 87,000 between October of 2023 and September of 2024, the lowest they've been since 2020.
There are a bunch of different causes that we have analyzed, maybe about 20.
Among them, the distribution of naloxone, a medicine that reverses an overdose, also a shifting drug supply, fentanyl becoming less potent, and community awareness. Des Gupta sends his reports back to the clinics that originally sent the samples, including North Carolina's Harm Reduction Coalition.
We have Narcan.
Outreach workers here say the drug supply is constantly changing, and it's important to know what exactly people are using.
Overdose reversal is not as cut and dry as it used to be.
For Greg Swan, these resources weren't there for his son, Drew.
He was beautiful. He was a model. He was super smart.
Drew died of an overdose 12 years ago. His son, always on Greg's mind.
I just had, a moment in the Walmart where I just had to remember him, But normally I don't get, caught up like that.
There's nothing that compares with this drug in terms of death.
Now Swan is on a mission to talk to every high school student in the country about the dangers of an overdose.
You got to go warn these kids. They're dying, so we got to put our foot on the gas.
United in Purpose doing their part to stop the overdose crisis. Priya Sridhar, NBC News, Chapel Hill, North Carolina.
Priya, thanks. Well, it's easy to think of Antarctica as a permanently barren, frozen wasteland, but many scientists say it's now facing its own climate crisis. One of the biggest concerns is the increasing amount of rainfall it sees each year, which contributes to the ice cover melting. But that is not all. More rain there has ripple effects all the way here in the U.S. NBC News national climate reporter Chase Kane took a trip to the southern hemisphere to learn more.
Clumsy on land, but lightning fast in the water. Penguins are captivating, but climate change is bringing a new threat to these endearing little birds, a threat
Wipe the lens.
which also caught me by surprise.
It would be a fair assumption that it only snows in Antarctica, right? But you might notice it's actually raining right now. And this is one of many signs of climate change in the region. In fact, this is the western peninsula of Antarctica, and this region is the second fastest warming.
Where it already rains an average of 50 days every year, but French scientists project by the end of this century, that will more than triple. Rain makes glaciers break off or calve more easily by weakening the ice, not unlike how it weakens the defenses of some penguins.
Chicks, they have really fluffy coats with a lot of down feathers, so they are protected from the cold, but they are not as waterproof as the adult feathers. So when we have rain and then they get soaked and then we have cold afterwards, we have higher chick mortality.
Julia is the resident bird expert for HX Expeditions, bringing tourists to Antarctica. On board, she and her fellow scientists explain the impacts of climate change. Although sometimes difficult, the Hickey family made this trip from Washington for this kind of real-world lesson.
And then you'd see like a dead penguin carcass, and you were like, that small penguin, died, and they didn't make it. I don't know, just how those small things can all come together and just affect us.
Penguins feel it directly, but soon we will too. Rain here makes the entire planet hotter. NASA satellites tracked how rain replaces snow and ice with vegetation. Since the late 80s, there's 14 times more Antarctic land that is green instead of white.
So it's contributing to warming as well, or to not reflecting as much energy as the white continent has done so far. So again, it's changing something in the equation will lead to a different result on the other end.
British scientists recently found it may even be raining here in the winter. They warn that will have devastating consequences, rippling well beyond the land of penguins by raising global sea levels. 129 million Americans live along our coasts, and increasingly, even when it's not raining, the oceans are spilling onto coastal streets on the sunniest of days. I'm National Climate Reporter Chase Kane.
Wow, it is all connected. Chase, thank you. Well, coming up, a consequential case in Washington, and it could force Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg to sell Instagram. More on the high-stakes trial set to start today. And renewed privacy concerns over smart glasses. The warning from 2 Harvard students about how much of your information could be at risk. Morning News Now. We'll be right back. Back now with the travel slowdown that's sparking concern among some of the major airlines. Inflation is causing a lot of Americans to spend less on travel, while President Trump's trade war is leading many foreign tourists to boycott travel to the U.S. NBC's Hallie Jackson spoke exclusively with the CEO of Frontier Airlines about how the company is evolving to try to meet passengers' needs.
Hey there. You know, with spring break travel in full swing, the airline industry is now looking ahead to summer, with some bracing for potential turbulence given the ongoing economic uncertainty. But as the head of Frontier and our exclusive one-on-one tells me, he's feeling optimistic anyway. Right now, the spring break rush for families coast to coast.
You are welcome to board at this time.
But this year, a difference.
It was a worse spring break than the last couple of years.
People pulling back, according to Frontier Airlines CEO Barry Biffle.
And what it's become clear is obviously there's been some challenges with travel demand, and we've seen it in all industries now.
Already this spring, one travel analyst warning alarm bells are ringing, with Americans spending less on trips now compared to last year, and major airlines, including American, Delta, and United, signaling a slowdown.
I think that as we look here today, I'm optimistic.
You may be the only airline CEO right now who is optimistic about what the next 6 months to a year may hold.
Well, I think what's happened is there's going to be a massive reversal of fortune. Over the last several years, the legacy carriers have done very, very well at the expense of us, but there's now too much domestic supply.
Frontier's sales pitch, lower prices for cost-conscious customers who can live without the extras.
In any type of recessionary or kind of economic challenge environment, the Walmart effect, businesses like ours do well.
And while President Trump has paused most of his most punishing tariffs, many experts still fear the remaining 10% and more could hurt the economy. And the biggest fallout for airlines may come from boycotts, with frustrated foreigners avoiding American travel. Already, bookings from Mexico are down 23% this year. Canada, 40%.
Now we're seeing boycott travel to the United States out of Europe. So can you imagine? That's a massive market. This is a huge challenge.
For now, Frontier is hoping to lure domestic travelers by offering first-class seats later this year, and this summer eliminating the bag fee, capitalizing on competitor Southwest's decision to reverse its longtime perk of 2 bags flying free.
We've been that kind of nickel and dime airline. Now, for $19, you can get free change fees, free carry-on bag, and also gets your free checked bag.
You think you'll make that permanent?
Never say permanent on anything in this industry, but I'll tell you that it's been wildly successful.
Still, there are other challenges ahead for the airline industry more broadly, like the nation's shortage in air traffic controllers.
On a normal day with no weather, it's generally not that big of a challenge. Okay. However, I'll take Florida as an example. Spring break weekends. If you mix any kind of weather with that, we have cancellations across the industry. And the reason for it is we exceed the capabilities of all of the air traffic controllers there.
Frontier's also taken some flack for things like on-time performance, for example. What are you doing to make that a better experience for folks?
Well, look, that's something we talked to Secretary Duffy about. The biggest challenges we have, number one is ATC, and number two is common space at airports. It's not a level playing field.
Biffle, a kind of selfie CEO, travels often on his own planes to assess the experience, and he's bullish on summer travel, typically the peak season for airlines. Is there any destination you're seeing kind of pop right now?
I think the domestic is in vogue again because of a lot of things going on in the marketplace, and so I think you're going to see a lot of people travel all over the United States this summer.
The summer's hottest destination may be closer to home. Of course, that summer travel season is coming up right around the corner. Back to you.
All right, Hallie Jackson, thanks so much. More money news now. The FTC's antitrust trial against Meta kicks off in Washington today. CNBC's Silvana now joins us with that and much more. Good morning, Silvana.
Stephen, good morning to you. So the Federal Trade Commission's blockbuster antitrust trial against Meta, as you mentioned, it kicks off today in a courtroom in Washington, and the FTC claims Meta has a monopoly over the personal social media market, and it argues Meta shouldn't have been allowed to buy Instagram for $1 billion in 2002, and then WhatsApp for $19 billion in 2014, and it's calling for those apps to be spun off. Now, the trial is expected to last several weeks, with Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg, former COO Sheryl Sandberg, and Instagram's co-founder expected to testify. Apple is reportedly working on a Vision Pro headset that plugs into your Mac. So Bloomberg reports the company has been debating the best way forward for the device following disappointing sales. Now, this includes a version that connects to the user's Mac, allowing them to stream content on their display and use enterprise apps. And Tennessee is the easiest state to save money, and while Hawaii is the hardest, a new Bankrate study says Tennessee's lower state and local taxes and cost of living makes it easier to save. Hawaii has a high cost of living and a falling employment rate. Now, Bankrate comparing all 50 states based on several metrics, including economic conditions, taxes, and interest rates for money market accounts and CDs. Now, Tennessee is followed by Missouri, Texas, Oklahoma, and Florida. And at the bottom is Hawaii, Connecticut, Vermont, California, and New Jersey, Stephen.
Shocking that New York is not at the bottom.
Right?
That is incredible.
Right?
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, Silvana, learn something new from you every day. Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
All right, now to two Harvard students who were trying to raise awareness about privacy concerns surrounding smart glasses. They combined the new tech with artificial intelligence to identify complete strangers within seconds, pulling names, job information, even their addresses with just a glance. NBC's Aaron McLaughlin has more.
Harvard students Kane Artifio and Anfu Nguyen say they created this viral video.
Is your address?
To sound the alarm over artificial intelligence and privacy.
We built glasses that let you identify anybody on the street.
The two took a pair of so-called smart glasses, which have a built-in camera. Practically undetectable, it's activated with a button or voice command. The glasses can capture photos or videos, and with artificial intelligence developed by the students, learn a lot from a face. Scouring internet databases, the AI often able to connect a face to a name, job, interest, even a home address. The information sent almost instantly straight to the user's phone.
June Lee, right?
Yeah.
Is this a warning?
I think so, yeah.
The tech, the students say, cost just $400 and was coded in a matter of days.
Two students, albeit Harvard students, were able to do this in 4 days.
Yeah.
What does that say?
All of the technology is already in place, and it's more just, a matter of effort into making it exist.
Realizing the potential dangers, Kane and Anfu say they never intended to make their mobile app public, so they let some of the code lapse, but they showed us its power using a laptop.
Oh, Aaron McLaughlin, journalism and media appearances. You're involved in writing. Television personality on the Today Show and NBC News Daily.
You can learn about hundreds of millions of people by just looking at them.
Someone walking down the street is just choosing to walk down the street, and now all of a sudden their identity could be known.
Yeah, this was what we wanted to let people know.
The pair's next project, hiding in plain sight.
And then we're creating a wearable necklace with a camera on it.
Oh my God, that's cool.
Yeah.
The necklace camera and AI scans people's faces and connects the wearer with profiles other users create and willingly share.
And we built it ourselves.
You built that yourself?
Yeah, I do think the world is very lonely today. People don't really go up to people or talk to people or learn about others in real life anymore. And I think some in real life, social network could change this.
Their hope that their tech will bring people together voluntarily. Aaron McLaughlin, NBC News, Cambridge, Massachusetts.
Wow, incredible stuff. Well, coming up, he turned the airport into a dance hall and danced his way to the hearts of millions of people. When we come back, we'll introduce you to the man whose pre-boarding performance has now gone viral. This is Morning News Now. But your news continues right now. Good Monday morning. I'm Stephen Romo in for Joe and Savannah today. And right now on Morning News Now, tech support. More tariff turmoil coming from the White House this morning. Top Trump administration officials now casting doubt on just how long those newly announced exemptions on many electronics will actually last. It comes as Wall Street gears up for yet another uncertain week of trading. We're watching your wallet in just a moment. Arson investigation. Traumatic moments over the weekend for Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro and his family. What we know this morning about the man accused of breaking into their home and setting it on fire as the Shapiros slept. Plus, Coachella confusion. The long lines coupled with sky-high temps and price tags that have social media stars sounding off. And don't you forget about me. Don't worry, I'm not going to sing it. Later in the hour, a high school reunion like no other. A brain, an athlete, a basket case, a princess, and a criminal back together as the cast of The Breakfast Club celebrates 40 years of the coming-of-age classic. 40 years, wow. Well, we begin this hour with yet another dose of economic uncertainty stemming from President Trump's trade tariffs. On Friday, the Trump administration exempted smartphones, computers, and other tech devices from the president's latest round of tariffs. But yesterday, the president and other administration officials said that exemption could be short-lived, with plans to impose tariffs on semiconductors. NBC News senior White House correspondent Gabe Gutierrez joins us now with the latest on this. Gabe, good morning.
Stephen, good morning. Those exemptions enacted Friday were seen as a boon for tech companies, including Apple, which makes most of its products in China. But the president and his top aides are now casting doubt on how long the exemptions will last, creating even more uncertainty. This morning, new confusion for American companies and consumers over President Trump's tariffs.
Financially, our country is going to be stronger than it's ever been.
After a weekend of back and forth over whether taxes for some electronics are going up. On Friday, exemptions for smartphones, computers, and other tech components announced by U.S. Customs and Border Protection because the White House said the president wants to ensure companies have time to move production to the U.S. Tariffs on electronics would affect American companies like Apple, who manufacture many devices overseas. On Sunday, the president's advisors tried to clarify.
The policy is no exemptions, no exclusions.
They're exempt from the reciprocal tariffs, but they're included in the semiconductor tariffs, which are coming in probably a month or two.
The president later posting nobody is getting off the hook, arguing there was no tariff exception announced on Friday, and that the products are just moving to a different tariff bucket. Last night on Air Force One, the president also promising tariffs on semiconductors, key parts used in many electronics. But Trump saying he might give exceptions to some companies or products.
You have to show a certain flexibility. Nobody should be so rigid.
Democrats say the president's chaotic tariff rollout has backfired.
President Trump now has a crisis in credibility.
All of it fueling new anxiety for consumers. At the Apple store in Chicago, some shoppers told us tariffs are driving them to upgrade their phones as soon as possible.
I feel like I shouldn't have to be checking the news every single day to make sure I can afford products that we've all been kind of accustomed to.
On Air Force One overnight, the president said those semiconductor tariffs will be announced over the next week. He also promised pharmaceutical tariffs are on the way, with the goal of having more prescription drugs made in the U.S. Stephen?
All right, Gabe Gutierrez, thanks so much. And let's get more analysis with Investopedia's editor-in-chief, Caleb Silver. Thanks so much for being here, Caleb. As we heard in Gabe's piece, the administration says it exempted these tech devices with the tariffs to give companies more time to move production to the United States. How realistic is that, and how long would that even take?
Yeah, that takes a very long time to build chip plants, to do the manufacturing here in the United States, to work that through the supply chain. So that's going to take a while. But this is all subject to what they call Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act of 1962. This means that the semiconductors like copper and aluminum are under review by the Trade Department to see if they pose some national security threat. The president and his advisors saying this is going to take a lot quicker than that to review these things. But don't forget, there's already 20% tariffs on a lot of these electronics that are in place right now. The question is, are they going to go higher, or are they actually going to be exempt once this review is complete? It's very confusing for both retailers, very confusing for consumers, but also for the manufacturers of these products.
Yeah, the semiconductor thing is something that people have really not talked about until the weekend. What kind of impact could that have on raising prices potentially?
We use semiconductors for just about everything. They're in here, they're in cars right now. They are basically the railroads of the 21st century. We need them for every single thing. We import so many of them from countries like Taiwan, South Korea, obviously China. We've been making them here in the U.S. Companies like Intel are doing it. They're promising big manufacturing plants. These things take years to actually build and get online and then work those products through the supply chain. So it's going to take a while for that to happen. In the meantime, you have this review and you don't actually know what pricing is going to be for a lot of these products.
So more back and forth, more confusion on the tariffs over the weekend. Looking for the markets to open, how is that impact going to shape up?
Yeah, we're seeing a continued momentum from last week, which was one of the most volatile weeks in the history of the stock market. But we ended Friday on a positive note. By the time the week was over, the stock market was up some 5%. Stock futures pointing to a higher open. But it's early, it's Monday morning, anything can happen. There are so many different winds of change going on with this administration, can't quite pin it down, but every little headline sends the market one way or the other. I expect volatility, but we will probably have a higher open.
Yeah, just a tweet can change everything on the stock market at volatile times. So we've talked a lot about tariffs and the potential to increase the risk of recession. I wanted to ask you about billionaire hedge fund manager Ray Dalio told Meet the Press yesterday he believes that something could happen that's even worse than a recession. Startling to hear that. He was saying that the global monetary system could pretty much just break down. Do you think that could happen, and what would it take for us to get there?
Yeah, what Mr. Dalio was talking about, I've interviewed him several times on this, is the fact that there is less appetite for our government bonds. The U.S. Treasury is the most valuable, most widely held asset on the planet. There is a little less demand from that from countries like China and Japan, plus a de-dollarization. So as the U.S. becomes more insulated, we don't have people buying our debt. That hurts our ability to service our debt. If we can't service our debt, we could have a real deficit problem here in this country. We already do. He's warning about that in a new world order where the United States is more isolated, and you have countries like China, Russia, India, North Korea working together, Europe working with China, and the U.S. is kind of on its own with a lot of debt.
A lot of people Googling bond markets, trying to figure out exactly
the bond market runs things around here.
For sure. All right, Caleb, thanks so much. We appreciate it. Well, President Trump is hosting Nayib Bukele, the president of El Salvador, at the White House today. The Central American country has become a key player in the Trump administration's mass deportation efforts after El Salvador agreed to accept migrants in its infamous maximum security prison. Since March, more than 200 Venezuelan immigrants that the Trump administration has accused of gang activity have been sent there instead of back to their home country. NBC News White House correspondent Vaughn Hilliard joins us now from Washington with more on this. Vaughn, good morning to you. So what can we expect from the president of El Salvador's visit today?
Right. The timing of this meeting here from President Bukele at the White House is quite something. In a courthouse today, we are expecting the government to turn over a filing detailing further Kilmar Abrego Garcia's situation inside of that El Salvador prison. This is, for the administration, a moment where over the weekend, in their own filings to a judge who ordered that the U.S. government help, quote, facilitate the return of Abrego Garcia to the U.S., that President Trump, in a social media post, said that individuals that are sent by the U.S. to El Salvador are in the, quote, sole custody of President Bukele and his, quote, sovereign government, essentially saying that once the U.S. supports an individual, that they are no longer responsible for sending those getting those individuals back, even if, in the case of the Supreme Court, orders them returned. And so we should expect more court back and forth between the two sides as it relates to Kilmar Abrego Garcia's specific situation. But of course, his case is part of a much broader one about the Trump administration's efforts to deport large numbers of individuals who have never been charged or convicted of any specific crimes, but have faced questionable allegations of having been related to MS-13 gang here. President Bukele has remained a close ally of this White House here, and the two have a partnership, the U.S. providing more than $6 million as part of this arrangement to El Salvador to house and essentially keep these individuals inside of the El Salvador prison.
Sparking a lot of conversations about due process, that entire ordeal. Vaughn, I also wanted to ask you about the U.S. and Iran having talks over the weekend about Iran's nuclear program. What are the key takeaways from those conversations?
Right. Folks will recall during the first Trump administration that the White House pulled out of the Iran nuclear agreement that was struck by President Obama in his White House in 2015 with Iran, with Russia, with China, and several other European countries. And in the years since, we have seen Iran increase its nuclear enrichment program. And this led to the Trump administration wanting to engage in direct talks with Iran officials, which is exactly what happened here this weekend. Steve Witkoff, the special envoy for President Trump, going to Oman. Oman's foreign minister essentially shuttling notes over the course of 2.5 hours between two different rooms that included Witkoff and the Iranian foreign minister. And these were the first conversations in now about 8 years between the two sides. And at the end of that meeting, the Iranian foreign minister and Witkoff did engage in a brief conversation. I actually talked to Steve Witkoff over the weekend. He told me it was a very positive and constructive conversation, and that the two sides intend to meet again this upcoming Saturday, April 19th.
And if that were not enough headlines coming out of Washington, Vaughn, we have even more. This weekend, President Trump's health made some headlines. The White House releasing results from Trump's annual physical. What did we learn from his doctors this time?
Right, Steve. There were a lot of questions about the president's health, in large part because during his first administration, there was a lack of transparency from the White House about his physical condition. There were doctors that gave quite glowing statements about his physical being without providing often the exact numbers that we saw come out here from the White House physician in the last 24 hours. The White House physician saying that the president's vitals look good, that he is in great physical condition, and going as far as to say that he is, I'll read this here for you, that as I'm struggling to find this in my notes here, President Trump's days include participation in multiple meetings, public appearances, press availability, and, quote, frequent victories in golf events. President Trump exhibits excellent cognitive and physical health and is fully fit to execute the duties of the commander-in-chief and head of state. The president suggesting, as well as his White House physician, that he went through a cognitive test as well and completed it with a 30 out of 30 score. Of course, for the president, this is the type of physical exam that he wants to report out, and a good one, apparently, at that. Steve?
I wonder if golf is better exercise if you win. I'm no expert there. All right, Von Hilliard, thanks so much.
Appreciate it, my friend.
Well, to Pennsylvania now, where a man is facing charges, including attempted murder, in connection to a fire this weekend at Governor Josh Shapiro's official residence. Police evacuated the governor and his family from that home around 2 a.m. Sunday morning, and thankfully no one was hurt. NBC News correspondent Shaquille Brewster is in Harrisburg with more on what police say appears to be a targeted attack. Shaq, good morning.
Good morning. And police are saying that attack started at the fence line that surrounds the governor's property. They say that in newly released court documents that the suspect was wearing a black jacket, black boots, was carrying a bag as he hopped the fence and evaded police and then used Molotov cocktails to start that fire, all as the governor and his family were sleeping inside.
This morning, a 38-year-old man now in custody after an alleged arson at the home of Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro. Police say Cody Bomber scaled a fence to break into the mansion, using a handmade device to start the fire as the governor and his family slept.
We have a structure fire at the governor's residence.
New photos showing the dramatic damage inside the residence. Shapiro, his wife, their children, and 2 dogs, along with some guests, all safely evacuated as firefighters doused the flames. The governor speaking out Sunday.
This type of violence is not okay. I don't give a damn if it's coming from one particular side or the other. It is not okay.
According to investigators, the entire incident unfolding in just a matter of minutes before Bomber managed to escape.
He clearly had a plan. He was very methodical in his approach.
Bomber faces charges of attempted murder, terrorism, aggravated arson, and aggravated assault, according to court documents. Past social media posts from Bomber showing him critical of the Biden administration, writing in one post, Biden supporters shouldn't exist. Bomber had broken a window with a hammer, an affidavit saying Bomber told authorities if he'd found the governor, he would have beaten him with the hammer. Just hours before the incident, the governor, who is Jewish, hosted a Passover celebration, sharing this picture of his Seder table on social media.
Lori and I are overwhelmed by the prayers and the messages of support.
Shapiro, a Democrat, became governor in 2022 after serving as Pennsylvania's attorney general for 6 years. Last year, he made Vice President Kamala Harris's shortlist of potential running mates in her bid for the White House. Now, Shapiro saying he refuses to let this alleged attack stop him from doing his job.
If this individual was trying to deter me from doing my job as your governor, rest assured I will find a way to work even harder.
Now, those court documents that were released overnight also detailing that authorities were able to recover a small black bag and a small sledgehammer from their search of the suspect's home. We know the FBI is also assisting in this investigation. By the way, we saw overnight that Vice President J.D. Vance commented on the incident, calling it disgusting. Authorities here say that federal charges are definitely possible.
Terrifying details. Shaq, thanks so much. Well, this morning, investigators are continuing their search for more pieces of the helicopter that crashed into the Hudson River on Thursday, killing all 6 people on board, including 3 children. NBC News correspondent Aaron McLaughlin has been following that story for us and joins us now with the latest. Aaron, good morning.
Steve, good morning. Divers are expected to return to the waters of the Hudson today. In fact, in the distance, you can see a police boat right around the area where the helicopter went down. This morning, the FAA says that the helicopter tour company in question has shut down its operations. We want to warn you that some of the images you're about to see are disturbing. Just days after that tragic helicopter crash in New York City, the FAA says the company involved in the deadly incident, New York City Helicopter Tours, is shutting down their operations immediately.
Please keep your eyes open. You guys see anything in the water?
This comes after some lawmakers like New York Senator Chuck Schumer asked the agency to stop the tour company from flying until the investigation is complete.
New York Helicopter Tours is under investigation, under federal investigation for these deaths.
Before the FAA's announcement, the company writing that they are profoundly saddened by the devastating crash into the Hudson River, adding they are fully cooperating with the FAA and NTSB investigations. According to the NTSB, the chopper was not equipped with any flight recorders, and no onboard video recorders have been recovered.
Oh, my goodness.
The crash killed everyone on board, including the pilot, Sean Johnson, a Navy veteran, and Augustine Escobar and his wife, Merce, along with their 3 children, the family visiting from Spain and celebrating a birthday.
They left together. They left without suffering.
Merce's brother speaking out.
We want to remind and honor their happiness and their smile forever.
The FAA also tells NBC News in a statement that it will, quote, be launching an immediate review of the helicopter tour operator's license and safety record, adding safety is the FAA's #1 priority, and we will not hesitate to act to protect the flying public. Meanwhile, the NTSB says that they have yet to find the helicopter's main rotor and gearbox. And New York Senator Chuck Schumer saying if they don't find it, it's going to be very difficult to determine exactly what went wrong. Steve?
All right, Aaron McLaughlin, thank you. Well, turning now to your morning news now forecast. NBC meteorologist Michelle Grossman tracking it all for us. Michelle, good morning.
Good morning. And thankfully, relatively quiet, at least to start out the work week. We're looking at a small system that's going to bring some spring snow, also some spring showers. So the snow will fall in northern parts of Michigan, Wisconsin, the UP of Michigan, and northern parts of Minnesota. We have a severe storm threat in portions of the Ohio Valley into the Appalachians, a little bit of the mid-Atlantic, too. We'll talk more about that in a second. But notice most of the country is nice and dry from the southeast, the south central states, into the middle of the country. The west also, it's warm out west. We're looking at temperatures above normal for this time of year. So the temperatures this week, a big story. Now, as we near Wednesday, still keeping it relatively quiet. I know it's a lot of spring break times for people getting out and flying. So this is good news as we look at the map on Wednesday. In April, chill in portions of New England into the northeast. Still really warm in the middle of the country. Warm winds, that's going to increase that fire threat once again. We're seeing that as well today. A little bit of rain and snow in the Intermountain West. Could see some along the mountains of the West Coast as well. That's it. We're looking at a lot of sunshine on Wednesday from coast to coast. And then as we near Friday, things get a little bit more active, but still relatively quiet. Friday, we're looking at a rainy day from portions of the upper Midwest along the Great Lakes as well. Still, though, plenty of sunshine from New England, the Northeast, the Southeast, into the South Central states. Rockies, storms. We're going to look at that, and that's going to move to the east as we head towards the weekend. But as we look at today, we're looking at that storm system in parts of the UP and Michigan, northern Minnesota, also northern Wisconsin. You can kind of see that spinning there. So we're seeing some blue. We're going to see some snow in portions of that area. We could see 4 to 8 inches. Also looking at rain, some could be heavy at times. Where you see those brighter colors right now, that's where we're looking at the heaviest rain falling. So this trails all the way down to portions of the Northeast into the Mid-Atlantic. And once we get the daytime heating going, we do expect the chance of some strong storms. There's that front as it moves to the east, a spring storm targeting the northern Great Lakes, severe storms to the Mid-Atlantic and also the lower Ohio Valley. It'll move further to the east, and here's that flow there, that really cold air coming in. That's going to bring more scattered snow showers downwind of the Great Lakes. So late in April, still seeing the snow falling. The severe risk for this afternoon, 14 million people at risk, especially where you see this yellow area, though we could see the storms too where you see the green for Pittsburgh, Columbus. But the likeliest spot will be in this yellow coloring, Washington, D.C. to Morgantown, Charleston, West Virginia, Lexington. We're worried about large hail, damaging winds gusting over 60 miles per hour. A few tornadoes are possible. That's on the lower risk, but still not zero. So we're going to watch out for that as we head towards the afternoon and evening hours. And on the cold side, there is that snow locally up to 8 inches. We have winter weather advisories, winter storm warnings. A winter storm warning is in that pink color there. And that's because we could see quite a bit of snow. You see the legend there, 6 inches in purple, 8 in pink. And notice all those spots where we could see accumulating snow. The temperature story, this is a big story too. We have that jet stream kind of dipping a little bit to the south in the northern plains to portions of the upper Midwest, the Great Lakes. So we're looking at temperatures chilly in Minneapolis today, 5 degrees below what is typical for this time of year. But a lot of warm air in place from the northwest to the southwest, the south central states into the southeast, the mid-Atlantic looking really warm as well. Charleston, West Virginia, we're looking at 77 degrees. That's going to aid in the chance of some of those storms later. Tucson, 93. That's 11 degrees above what is typical for this time of year. And then as we look towards tomorrow, we're looking at really warm air once again in the west, 70s for Boise and Billings, and looking at 87 in Las Vegas. Look at that dip, though, in the east. We're looking at temperatures below normal there.
Wow, I'm going to complain about it a little, as I like to do, but I know you're going to follow up bragging about Florida.
Gorgeous. I'm telling you, I was like, why don't I live there? Yeah. Because it's so nice.
That's why so many people move there. Yeah.
No, it was crowded.
Alone, I bet. All right. Much more to come on this edition of Morning News Now, including a surprise Palm Sunday appearance from a recovering Pope Francis. His message to the world's Catholics as Holy Week begins. But first, after the break, Russia launching its deadliest attack of the year so far on Ukraine over the weekend, killing dozens of people. We've got the latest on the global negotiations for a ceasefire. That's coming up next. We're back now with details on the deadliest attack on Ukraine so far this year in the country's war with Russia. Russian missile strikes on the city of Sumy in northeastern Ukraine killed at least 34 people on Sunday. More than 100 were injured as the airstrikes rattled residents who were out attending morning services for Palm Sunday. This comes as efforts led by the U.S. to get a ceasefire have brought few results. NBC News chief international correspondent Keir Simmons joins us from Dubai with more on this. Keir, good morning.
Hey, good morning to you. This attack condemned by many European capitals, Germany's new leader calling it a war crime, the French president saying Moscow shows a blatant disregard for human life, while the Secretary of State calls it a tragic reminder of why President Trump wants a durable peace.
Russia's deadliest missile strikes this year were captured on video. Terror in the city of Sumy as people gathered on Palm Sunday morning. 34 killed, including 2 children, just days after President Trump's Russia envoy, Steve Witkoff, spent more than 4 hours with President Putin in St. Petersburg, discussing what the Kremlin called a Ukraine settlement. Many other Trump officials condemning the killings, his Ukraine envoy saying it crosses any line of decency, his Secretary of State calling it horrifying. While President Trump saying overnight the attack was a mistake.
I think it was terrible, and I was told they made a mistake, but I think it's a horrible thing. I think the whole war is a horrible thing.
The moment of impact caught on dash cam. A local Ukrainian mayor saying a military award ceremony was planned in the region, calling that a pretense for 2 strikes on a civilian area, one following another. Ukrainian officials accusing Russia of using cluster munitions. Sumy is close to the Russian region of Kursk, where NBC News reported last month.
The Russian military doesn't appreciate being filmed, but believe me, there are a lot of troops here.
Moscow may be preparing for a major offensive in the region, analysts warn, even as the Trump administration talks peace. Overnight, President Zelensky saying what is missing right now is pressure on the aggressor, adding Russia is not afraid. And in an interview with 60 Minutes, recorded before the strikes, accusing some in the Trump administration of supporting Russian narratives.
And we still don't know, Stephen, very much about what was said between President Trump's envoy, Steve Witkoff, and President Putin. He went straight from there to a meeting here in the Middle East, a dialogue with Iran. And he's also handling Gaza and attempts to release the hostages there. It's a lot for one man, Stephen.
A lot going on. All right, Keir, thanks so much. All right, turning now to an urgent investigation underway in South Africa. Officials there say an American pastor was kidnapped at gunpoint in front of his wife and kids and is now being held for ransom. NBC's George Solis has that story.
Hello, church. This is your missionary, Josh Sullivan here.
Urgent search to find Josh Sullivan, a Tennessee pastor authorities say was kidnapped by armed men in South Africa while preaching. Law enforcement there telling NBC affiliate WBIR Sullivan is being held for ransom and telling NBC News the investigation is at a very sensitive stage.
The suspects allegedly forced the victim into his own vehicle and fled the scene with him.
According to his blog, Sullivan moved to South Africa in 2018 to start a branch of Fellowship Baptist Church.
You can see the sign here of our church.
Sullivan touring the church in this YouTube video posted this past February.
My heart dropped. There's no doubt about that.
Pastor Tom Hatley has been a longtime mentor to the 34-year-old father of three. He's in touch with Sullivan's wife, Megan, who shared that she and her kids were there when he was abducted.
I was obviously very concerned, and I hated that Megan and the children were that witnessed this. I've cried, my wife's cried, our church people have cried.
Sullivan's mother telling NBC News, "You never think about something like this happening to your child." The State Department saying it's aware of reports of a U.S. citizen kidnapped in South Africa. Back home in Tennessee, calls for prayers.
And we need to be praying for him and his safe return, and that God would take care of him.
George Solis, NBC News.
George, thanks. Well, Pope Francis greeted thousands in St. Peter's Square yesterday to start Holy Week. NBC News international correspondent Claudio Lavanga joins us now from Rome with that and more. Good morning, Claudio.
Good morning, Stephen. Well, that's right. Yesterday, Pope Francis made yet another surprise appearance, this time in St. Peter's Square, to greet the 20,000 people who were there to celebrate Palm Sunday. Now, this is the latest in a series of unannounced appearances by the Pope, who's still recovering from pneumonia, and despite recommendations by doctors to avoid contact with people for at least 2 months since he left hospital in mid-March. Over the past week, he visited St. Peter's Basilica again to check out the latest restoration. He went to pray at a basilica here in Rome and met with King Charles III and Queen Camilla at the Vatican. Let's go to Ecuador now, where preliminary results show President Daniel Noboa won the country's presidential election on Sunday. Noboa has been president since he won a snap election in 2023 to complete the term of the previous president, and will now have a full 4-year term to continue his controversial, somewhat, war on the drug-fueled violence that has gripped the South American country lately. Noboa's closest challenger, Luisa Gonzalez, rejected the results and demanded a recount. And let's end this tour of the world in Thailand, where on Sunday, the nation's largest, most important and wettest festival has kicked off. Every year, this time, people across Thailand celebrate Songkran, a celebration of Thai New Year and the end of the rice harvest season. Now, officially, it's all about purification, honoring the elders, and celebrating a sense of renewal. But the highlights of the festival are always these massive water fights with people of all ages spraying each other with buckets and water guns. Now, Stephen, if you watched the last season of White Lotus, there was a scene in there that will kind of give you a glimpse of what that's all about, but I'm not going to say any more. I don't want to spoil it for people who haven't caught up with it yet. Back to you, Stephen.
No spoilers, but that is a really great scene. All right, Claudio, thanks so much. Well, coming up, sour nose. After the break, we're digging into some Coachella chaos over the weekend. Crazy long lines, feverishly high temps, and eye-opening food prices. It's all got festival goers sounding off on social media. More on that coming up next. We're back now with some new details about major changes in the works when it comes to how we fly. And these changes will take effect just in time for the busy travel season. They include that looming Real ID deadline and a tech upgrade that may mean the end to paper boarding passes. NBC News correspondent Maggie Vespa is at Chicago's O'Hare Airport with more on this and what it could mean for those travel plans. Good morning, Maggie.
Hey, Stephen, good morning. Yeah, we're talking first about the Real ID deadline. It is fast approaching. It's less than a month away. Now you add to that a new reported completely separate plan to completely do away with paper plane tickets. And we're talking about major changes as to how Americans get through security and eventually board their flights.
Just in time for the summer travel season, now major shifts in the way we fly are underway, starting with the rush to get a real ID in the next few weeks.
What do you mean I have until May 7th to get a real ID?
The federal government still sticking to that long-delayed May 7th deadline, requiring travelers using a driver's license to board domestic flights to have a real ID, which has specific markings on the top of the card.
I don't think anyone expected that, the day would finally come.
The TSA has said it can phase in enforcement, but those hoping to avoid delays are heading to the DMV in droves.
The Real ID driver's licensing appointments are now booked out to June in my area.
Passports, of course, will still work to get through security, but there may be more changes lining up for summer travel, including potential new rules that would make paper tickets a thing of the past. The International Civil Aviation Organization, a UN agency that advises countries on aviation practices, is looking to roll out a new digital travel credential, according to the Times of London, which would allow passengers to upload their passport info to their phones and use a scan of their face to check in, drop bags, and board a plane. How massive of a change would this be?
Something like this would really be a step into the future.
While the ICAO has not confirmed its plans to NBC News, the concept is similar to a TSA pilot program.
With touchless ID, there's no need to show a physical ID or boarding pass at security checkpoints.
Pre-check travelers flying with Delta, United, or Alaska Airlines can use their face to board at select airports, including Atlanta, DCA, LAX, and LaGuardia, as Americans coast to coast get ready for a busy travel season.
Some big changes, Maggie. That Real ID deadline, we know it's been delayed a few times, but now the real thing coming just 3 weeks away. What should people know if they plan to get on a flight soon and they still need one of those?
For sure. It's a big deal. It's a lot of stress for people. So number one, if you're going to get the Real ID, experts say definitely check with your state's licensing agency to make sure you show up with all the documentation you need to get that done. Things like utility bills, different forms of ID, that sort of thing. Remember, you can also make an appointment at your DMV to kind of lock in that slot, save you a little bit of time. They are booking up weeks, sometimes months in advance, though, because of this. So definitely take that into account and do it soon. And then finally, remember, assuming you go to the appointment, you get approved, it could take up to a week or more after getting approved to actually get the physical Real ID card. And in the meantime, TSA tell us they will not accept that kind of temporary paper copy that they give you here at security checkpoints. You need the actual card, so build in that pad time before any upcoming trips to make sure you don't turn that into a staycation, frankly, Stephen. I'll send it back to you.
Yeah, tons of important information there. Maggie, thanks so much. Well, Coachella has kicked off in the desert outside of Los Angeles with performances by Lady Gaga, Green Day, Charlie XCX, and more. But for some attendees, an event they hoped would be a dream come true turned into a nightmare thanks to hours-long lines to get onto the site. Here's NBC News correspondent Liz Croyce.
Well, hey, Stephen, good morning. That's right. Some people say they sat in the line to get into the car camping area at Coachella for 12 hours or more, earning it the nickname Carmageddon. Meanwhile, there were more problems ahead once attendees got inside the festival grounds with near record high temperatures in Indio on Sunday, and some on social media complaining of insane prices for food and drinks.
Tens of thousands making the pilgrimage to Coachella this year. Its star-studded performances lighting up the desert night sky.
We have been stuck in line for nearly 10 hours.
But for some, just getting into the festival was a journey in itself. TikTokers comparing parts of this year's Coachella to the infamous Fire Festival.
Like, what's the deal, Coachella? Like, what?
These music fans treated to a symphony of honking car horns instead of performances as they waited for 12 hours or more just to get into the car camping area at Coachella.
13 hours later, we're still not in line.
Attendees taking to social media as they sat in line stretching for miles, warning others no bathrooms along the way. Some stuck despite arriving as early as 2 a.m. The confusion continuing once they finally made it inside the campground.
This is really bad. No one knows where to set up.
Growing fears of missing the Friday headliner, Lady Gaga, as the lines stretched with no end in sight. Those inside the grounds at Coachella confronting sweltering temperatures.
It's so hot out here.
The highs on Friday soaring to 102 degrees, just 1 degree shy of the all-time record in the area. Meanwhile, attendees looking to quench their thirst face sky-high prices.
$17 lemonade. It's mostly ice.
It was just the cherry on top of an expensive weekend for some who paid more than $600 for general admission tickets alone. A simple meal of tacos adding up to $100, according to this TikToker. Still, the high prices didn't stop others from enjoying the music. But those with plans to attend the second weekend of Coachella this Friday, asking if a debacle might await them too.
And this comes as many people say they're priced out of festivals and concerts entirely due to soaring ticket prices, not to mention those high prices for food and drinks once inside. NBC has reached out to Coachella for comment. We have not yet heard back. Stephen.
Yikes. All right, Liz, thank you. Well, coming up, sign of the times after the break, where many Americans are feeling an Easter season price crunch ahead of the holy holiday this weekend. Eggs are not the only thing weighing on wallets. We'll have more on that coming up. We're back now with a look at the housing market, and for homeowners, there may be a window of opportunity opening up. Despite high prices and tough mortgage rates, a new report from Realtor.com says this week could be the best time all year to sell your home. NBC News business and data correspondent Brian Chung has a closer look for us. Brian, good morning. So what makes this week so special?
Yeah, well, sellers are going to want to listen up because this is the best week to sell, according to Realtor.com. And the reason why is because there's more interest from buyers and there's also less competition for other people trying to list their homes as well. So according to Realtor.com, they say that these statistics for listings that are clicked on online are up double digit, 18%, as well as the process of getting it across the finish line. So the homes are actually selling 9 days quicker, and they're even selling for a higher price. The median home, $4,800 more than the comparable average week for the rest of the year. But I want to point out, it's not just this week. They say generally spring tends to be the best time. So if you don't miss it, or if you do miss it this week, you still have the rest of spring. Just ideally get it done before summer.
Yeah, it could be very high pressure to try to get it done this week. It's interesting, though, there's so much economic uncertainty right now. I've been curious, what is the overall mood of the housing market?
Yeah, well, this is the caveat here, right? Because a lot of people might be saying, well, I've had my home listed. I'm not getting any more clicks going into this week. And that's because it's relatively iced out, this housing market. So when you look at just the stats, I mean, yes, inventory is up about 28% compared to last year. So the 2025 housing market does look a little looser than the 2024 market, but it's still tight inventory overall. And then on top of that, you have the concerns about this recession. If there's going to be an economic downturn, is that really the best time for you to be making a big purchase like that? That is icing some buyers out of the market, as well as the fact that a lot of people are not listing their homes and the inventory is tight, in part because they got 3-4% mortgage rates post-2020. And for that reason, they're not going to move out. So there's just not a lot of turnover. That means that sellers, if they are listing, it's really out of necessity. Maybe they are expanding their family, they got a new job, but they're not selling it for any other reason because, again, they got those good mortgage rates a few years ago.
Yeah, let's talk more about mortgage rates. What are they right now and how could they shape up this year?
Yeah, so, okay, yeah, this might be the best week for sellers, but for buyers, the big question is, of course, mortgage rates, mortgage rates, mortgage rates. The average rate right now is 6.6%, which is higher than the 3-4% rates that people were seeing a few years ago. And the forecast, by the way, from the National Association of Realtors is only 6.4%. So they're not forecasting a dramatic decline in rates for the rest of this year. And I know what a lot of people are thinking. Wait, if this recession happens, could we see mortgage rates go down? An expert telling us it might go down, but only to 6%. Which means that we really shouldn't expect to see 3 or 4% mortgage rates anytime soon.
Wow, so don't cross your fingers for a recession if you're in the housing market. All
exactly.
right.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Brian, for breaking that down for us. Well, if you're in the market to buy a PS5, you may need to dig a little deeper into your pockets. CNBC's Silvana Henao joins us with that and more money news. Good morning, Silvana.
Hey, Stephen, good morning. Yeah, Sony is raising the price of the PlayStation 5 by about 25% in Europe and the UK, and that's ahead of a likely increase in the US. Now, Sony citing inflation and the backdrop of a challenging economic environment. Now, consumers have been bracing for price hikes across a number of goods, and analysts have forecast a 30% hike in game consoles sold in the U.S. as their base case. Netflix is testing a new search feature powered by OpenAI to help you find movies and shows to watch. So Bloomberg reports this tool is available for select users in Australia and New Zealand, and you can search using terms other than a specific title or actor, such as your mood, which would, for example, let Netflix bring up dramatic shows if you say sad. Now, Netflix already uses AI for some features, such as learning your preferences based on your viewing history. And the Minecraft movie continues to stomp at the box office. The Warner Brothers video game adaptation bringing in an estimated $80 million in North America. That's its second weekend, and that's according to ComScore. Now, it's already topped $550 million worldwide, making it the highest grossing Hollywood release this year. Minecraft helping theaters after a dismal start to the year, with box office revenue now pulling even with this time last year, Stephen.
I did not see Minecraft being a smash hit. It just shows you I don't know anything
I know,
about
same.
movies.
Same.
Wow. All right, Silvana Henao, thank you so much. Well, Easter is right around the corner, but with prices still climbing on holiday staples, from candy to, of course, eggs, families may be trading tradition for some creativity this year. NBC News correspondent Stephanie Goss joins us now with a look at how these rising prices are reshaping holiday traditions.
Yeah, they are, Stephen. Good morning. Nice to see you. You know, call it a sign of the times. Eggs have gotten so expensive that people are instead choosing to decorate potatoes and marshmallows with their kids to save money. Just one of the many ways consumers are breaking with tradition this Easter to offset all the rising costs.
It's a holiday that usually means lots of eggs and lots of chocolate. But this year, that traditional Easter basket will likely cost you extra.
Has anyone decided what we are going to be hiding? Eggs, potatoes, or tomatoes? Because I can't fathom spending $40+ on eggs.
Despite a drop in wholesale prices and fewer bird flu outbreaks last month, the average cost of eggs reached a record high of $6.23 a dozen.
What we're seeing here is a lag. Retailers are taking a little bit of extra time unexpectedly to reduce those prices for consumers. We are not seeing those prices go down in time for Easter.
The price of chocolate also sky high due to a global cocoa shortage. It's all part of the reason why this year U.S. consumers are projected to spend a total of $23.6 billion on Easter, up from $22.4 billion last year. The biggest spending categories: decorations, gifts, food, and candy. At Hercules Candies, a local institution in East Syracuse, New York, prices of solid chocolates have gone up about 20% in the last year, including some Easter favorites, like their white chocolate bunnies.
We tried to hold the line on prices for as long as we can, but there comes a time when we just have to raise it. The customers have not really pushed back on the prices because they're so loyal. We're just going to be extremely busy this week.
Consumers aren't entirely giving up on eggs either. Kelly Friedel, a mom of two from Chicago, is trying something different with her family this year.
We chose to do something called foil eggs. You can take cardboard, cut them to the shape of an egg, wrap them in some tin foil. There's a couple of positive benefits too that we figured out. We're able to mail them. We're mailing them to grandma, we're mailing them to grandpa.
For many families this Easter holiday, the hunt is on for egg alternatives, from dip-dyed marshmallows to potatoes, rocks, and plastic. Arts and crafts giant Michaels says its #1 selling Easter product so far is this Kraft Egg Kit, currently on sale for just $2.49. It comes with a dozen plastic eggs, even an egg carton, all designed to mimic the traditional decorating experience. And while discounts for real eggs may be hard to come by, major retailers like Target, Kroger, and Walmart are all promising affordable holiday meal bundles to feed the whole family, from as low as $5 to $6 a person, proving there's still ways to save big this Easter Sunday.
So a couple of things to keep in mind. All those, those discount stores like Dollar General, they'll have a bunch of Easter stuff. Consignment shops, also, Stephen, a good place for parents to get, that one Easter dress that's only going to be worn once,
one time, yeah.
And then send it back to the consignment shop. But I don't know. I think they're onto something with this marshmallow thing. Yeah. Right? They don't crack. You don't have to boil them.
Right. I don't like
and if you
hard-boiled eggs
lose one in
anyway.
the house, it's not going to stink the place up.
Oh, that is so true. Been there, done that many times. All right, Stephanie, thanks so much.
You're welcome.
Well, coming up, don't you forget about me. When we come back, a high school reunion for the ages. The cast of The Breakfast Club back together 40 years later. Their reflection on the film's decades of success. That is coming up next. Finally this hour, 4 decades after they all served detention together, the cast of The Breakfast Club is back together again. The Misfits gathered to celebrate what has become one of Hollywood's most iconic classics. NBC's Dana Griffin has more on that highly anticipated reunion.
40 years ago, 5 Shermer High students from different walks of life turned a dreaded Saturday detention into movie gold. And for the first time since they were locked in that library, a brain, athlete, basket case, princess, and a criminal reunited.
This is the first time that Emilio has joined us. We don't have to use the cardboard cutout anymore.
I skipped all of my high school reunions, so this just was something that finally I felt I needed to do for myself.
Chicks cannot hold their smoke. That's what it is. The cast sharing their fondest memories.
That whole sequence when we were getting high, that was all improvised.
I'm so popular. Everybody loves me so much at this school.
Just $1 million budget for what would become one of the most popular and relatable coming-of-age classics.
The film is about the fact that everyone has to make that decision for themselves, what happens on Monday.
Crediting late filmmaker John Hughes for the film's authenticity and success.
I didn't know how rare it was going to be for a director to like actors. We are, a lot of times, a necessary evil. Hughes wanted partners.
Eat my shorts. You just bought yourself another Saturday, mister.
And remembering their stern principal played by the late Paul Gleason.
For 2 months, I got you. I got you.
He was a great guy to hate.
When asked if they'd support a remake,
I personally don't believe in remaking that movie because I think this movie is very much of its time.
Today's group photo, a perfect postscript to their legendary letter.
Sincerely yours, The Breakfast Club.
Dana Griffin, NBC News.
Gonna have that song stuck in my head all day. That's gonna do it for this hour of Morning News Now, but your news continues right now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.